Houston, we have a problem. And it's me. I am the problem. Not only did Uros Medic hit one of the sickest sellies that we have seen in UFC history after knocking out Jeff Neal, but he also absolutely crushed it on the microphone after getting the biggest win of his career. And I believe that that is a big reason as to why not only the UFC is heading to Belgrade, but the reason that this dude is the main event, and as John Anik would say, in whom this fight card has been built around, that is enter Uros Medic, one of the most exciting fighters in the UFC right now. And it's really good that Uros had the performance that he did against Jeff Neal, because this guy's been in the UFC for quite a while now, and he's won some, he's lost some, but now he is on a 3-fight win streak. And the reality is, every time that Medic steps in the octagon, someone is getting finished. Whether it's him or whether it is the opposition, this dude is must-see TV. And my read on this fight is the UFC is trying to throw him a bone here. They are trying to lay it off the backboard for Uros to come in and get the two-handed jam and get that big breakout opportunity that it feels like this guy just absolutely deserves, man. Like, can you feel it? Because I can when it comes to Uros Medic. This guy, to me, he's good on the mic. He's got the, the antics, the celebration, and most of all, he's got the fighting style. This dude looks to get people out of there in a hurry. And what I want to do is break down this matchup and kind of give my overall thoughts on this fight, because look, I like Daniel D-Rod Rodriguez. He's been in the UFC for a long time. He's kind of an OG at this point, a grizzled vet, but he's almost 40 years of age. And this dude, not that long ago, wasn't he in a prison in Tijuana? Right, so now this dude is about to bounce back here and have to walk into a 5-round main event against a surging, primed Uros Medic, who is one of the nastiest strikers that we have in a loaded 170-pound division right now. This, to me, just feels like the ultimate setup. Obviously, we've seen how 2026 has been. Anything can happen, and it's the fight game. Styles make fights. Anything can happen. All it takes is one shot. We get all those things. Daniel D-Rod Rodriguez, man, I feel like this dude is going to need a miracle to beat Uros Medic in Belgrade. That's the reality. So I want to break down this fight, outside of kind of my thoughts of, look, I'm looking forward to this in the aspect of I do think we get a KO regardless of who wins. But this, to me, just matchup-wise, is just such a bad matchup for D-Rod. And I think D-Rod's a good striker, but what does he do better at this point than Uros Medic? So we'll talk a little bit about it. I do want to break down the style of D-Rod, talk about what he brings to the table, how I think he could win this fight, and then we will do the same thing for Uros Medic, who has become one of my favorite fighters and guys to watch in the UFC right now. But when we talk about this matchup, the reason that I feel like this is such a bad matchup for D-Rod is, the UFC, so I'm going to pretend I'm the UFC for a second, right? And you could do the same with me. When we talk about, okay, so we're going to Belgrade for the first time in UFC history, this is a big deal. This is going to be, a big-time fight night to where this is a big deal. The UFC is going to a location for the first time. So the fans are going to be excited, right? Belgrade, heading to Serbia. This is a big deal, right? To some people, it might not. They're like, it's just another fight night. This is a big deal, man. And by having Uros Medic as the main event, the man in whom the card was essentially built around, they want to make sure he wins. At least in my opinion, right? You think that they want to go all the way to Serbia and watch D-Rod knock out Uros Medic? Like, I don't think that that's what the UFC wants. Right now, again, it's a fight, so they can only kind of line it up how they want. But the reality is D-Rod is older and slow, man. He's just older and slow. And one of his best weapons is the straight left hand. Guess who's got a better one? Medic. Guess who's faster than D-Rod? Medic. Guess who's a more technical all-around striker at this point in their careers? Medic. And guess what Medic also has? Underrated takedown defense and an underrated ground game. So if you think that D-Rod's going to come in here and out-grapple Medic, I just don't see it going down like that, man. So to try to slow down Uros using the grappling, he's got really good takedown defense. You see him grab the wizard, drive hard to get his back off the octagon side. Uros Medic is coming into his own, man. He is in the prime of his career right now, and I believe that D-Rod is out of his prime. That's not to say that D-Rod can't win this fight. So that's the matchup, right? Obviously, D-Rod, he's going to have a little bit of a reach advantage in this fight, but at the end of the day, I just do not, I'm not trying to be the bearer of bad news here, but this to me is just almost a lopsided fight in a way, right? And I know that when you talk about Daniel Rodriguez, to be fair, I'm always tuning into a D-Rod fight, right? He's got the look, he's got the, the swag to him of a guy that is just a true fighter, man. And the thing about D-Rod is when you look at him, you're like, this guy's got all these tattoos, and he's probably just some untechnical slugger in there that gets into these barn burners. And sometimes we do see that side of D-Rod, but for the most part, he is a very technically sound all-around fighter. He's got a solid submission game. He's actually decent on the ground from what we've seen throughout his career, but really his bread and butter's on the feet. He's a kickboxer. He's got solid boxing, a good jab, fights behind the left hand pretty well, mixes the kicks to the legs, to the body to eventually set up a high kick. So D-Rod's not bad on the feet, man. He's not bad at all. He's got good footwork. He can skate around really well, and we've seen if the fight hits the floor, he is able to submit guys, right? I mean, he's 20-5 in his career, and it's kind of crazy when, I was getting ready to do this video. For some reason, D-Rod strikes me as one of these guys, right, that's just, he's been in the UFC for forever, so I'm like, he's got to have like a journeyman record or something, right? Like he's 30-20 or something like that, and it's like, he's 20-5. D-Rod has only lost 5 MMA fights in his career, and we've seen these, these spans of activity, and then it's like he's away for a while, and then he comes back, so maybe that's the reason that it kind of feels like, I don't know, like there's like this journeyman vibe to D-Rod, but 20-5 is not bad, man. 9 wins by KO, 4 by submission, 5 first-round finishes, and I feel like that is what is a huge problem for him in this fight. It could be good, could be bad, right? Belgrade, we could have a problem, right? And that would be the fact that D-Rod would come in here. Well, it'd be good for Belgrade. D-Rod is about to have a problem, not Belgrade. Belgrade's about to be excited, I think, but the reality is D-Rod's a slow starter, right? He likes to build into the fight, likes to get the feel for things. Uros Medic is not going to allow that. He's not going to allow that whatsoever. So it's going to be on D-Rod to try to slow him down. And, some of the things we've seen throughout D-Rod's career, if you go back and you just look through, who he's fought, it's predominantly orthodox style of opponents, right? Kevin Holland, and by the way, he's on a 3-fight win streak of his own. Medic on a 3-fight win streak, all by finish. D-Rod on a nice little 3-fight win streak as well, right? Kevin Holland win, he surprised me. Right, because I'm like, wait a minute, he's kind of slower. Kevin Holland, you want to play the striking game, and Holland's good on the ground. And D-Rod just out-dogged him and was able to hurt him. And it's not often we see Kevin Holland hurt, right? So that was actually a pretty solid performance by D-Rod, which was, back in July of 2025, right? Then goes out there, stops Santiago Ponzinibbio with that blitzing, barrage of shots. Was, it's a close one against Alex Morono in 2024. But if you watch this fight here against Kelvin Gastelum, a southpaw, lower center of gravity southpaw, it was giving D-Rod some problems. It was giving him some problems. The straight left hand down the middle, the timing, the rhythm. What's Uros Medic? A southpaw. So one of the times that we've seen D-Rod throughout his career, while there's been a lot of good, when he fought a fellow southpaw in Kelvin Gastelum, who I understand is a big guy, has the wrestling threat, and does have power, it definitely gave D-Rod some issues. And we obviously saw him get, set up with the high kick by Ian Gary, but we know Gary's one of the best in the world. Was throwing it to the body, then set it up, set the high kick upstairs. Gary's about to fight for the belt. He's one of the best fighters, like him or not, in the UFC. And, had some issues on the ground against Neil Magny, but we know how crafty of a son of a gun Neil Magny is. The close fight with Li Jingliang. So you get the point. We've seen D-Rod in the UFC for a long time, man, and it's been since 2020 that he's been in the UFC. So he's been around for a while. The reality is, in this fight, Daniel Rodriguez needs to drag this thing out. And I will say this. While Uros Medic is very, very dangerous early and he's a fast starter, we have seen guys be able to land some shots on him early. We saw Gilbert Urbina be able to rock him early and hurt him bad, right? So it's not to say that D-Rod can't land a sharp left hand down the middle and catch Medic, who's being overly aggressive and feeling the, the vibes because he's in Belgrade and all excited and all the emotions of being in the main event and all that kind of stuff. It's not to say that D-Rod can't snipe him with a shot quick and change the entire course of the fight. But if I'm Daniel Rodriguez, man, I'm sticking and moving and trying to drag this thing out. Because one of the things we have seen from D-Rod, while sometimes it looks like he's breathing heavy, his gas tank is okay. It's okay. Sometimes it looks good. Other times it looks maybe like it's got some holes in it. But the reality is the longer the fight goes, I feel like that is where D-Rod is going to thrive, because in a dogfight, that to me favors Daniel Rodriguez. That's how, he can fight technical from range, but if he can pull you into one of those close quarter street fight type of brawls, That is where D-Rod often has a lot of success because he's only been finished, I believe, twice in his career, right? One by KO, which was against Gary, and then once by submission, which was against Neil Magny. So I know Neil Magny, older at this point now, but we know Magny's got that long frame. You know, he's got a solid ground game. I don't think Medic is going to be out here shooting any takedowns whatsoever. I think this fight takes place on the feet. If anyone's looking to grapple, I feel like it should be D-Rod, especially early. Get into the clinch. Try to wear on the arms of Uros Medic, right? Attack the leg. Try to take away his base and take away some of that spring in his step because Medic is going to be so much faster than D-Rod, and that's the big concern for me for Daniel in this fight. He's going to be very, very outmatched with the speed. It's going to be night and day. It's going to be night and day, man. So how do you deal with a guy that's a little bit faster? You chop at the base, take away some of the movement, try to slow him down, right? Try to use your weight and physicality because I do think D-Rod might be a little bit bigger in there to where if he can grind Medic up against the fence, right? Try to mix in some takedowns, even though I don't think Rodriguez is going to have really any success getting the fight to the floor by smudging, but I go with a little bit of a smudge approach is my thought, right? Kind of push him up against the octagon side, wear on him, land some shots in close, knees to the body, elbows, try to really start to kind of drain that gas tank of Uros Medic because while Medic is very, very entertaining, there's these questions that come with these fighters when they get that first 5-round fight of what happens if the fight goes long. Now, I'm not anticipating that the fight goes long, but say it does, right? It's a fight, right? Anything can happen. If the fight does go long, I think that those are going to be areas of opportunity for D-Rod to capitalize, right? If he can find a way to take away that explosiveness of Medic, maybe survive some early, bad moments, right, where he gets clipped, gets dropped, he's able to kind of recover. Medic kind of spends a bunch of energy trying to get the finish, and D-Rod makes it through the round. I feel like that's the type of adversity that D-Rod would have to battle to win this fight. It's definitely possible, but I think he's got to slow this fight down, try to drag it out. Outside of him clipping Medic on the way in early, D-Rod's not a fast twitch guy, man. He likes to get a feel for the fight, move and groove, and then he kind of starts to build as the fight starts to play out. We especially saw that in the Ponzinibbio fight and the Kevin Holland fight most recently. So this isn't Mike Perry, right? And it's crazy because Platinum Mike Perry fought D-Rod back in the day. This isn't Plotty Man Brawler Mike Perry who's going to be standing in range looking to just, gunsling with you in the pocket. This is going to be a guy that will gunsling with you in the pocket in Uros Medic, but with speed, precision, and legit accuracy. So I feel like D-Rod needs to drag this fight out, try to take Medic into some of those deep waters to where we could then see, some of those questions answered about the explosiveness of Medic and that gas tank as the fight starts to play out. So outside of an early shot landing from Rodriguez, I feel like he needs to make this a little bit of a smudge fest early, drag this thing out, and start to kind of wear on Medic, and then that's where I think D-Rod could capitalize and find some sort of finish. This fight, in my opinion, does not go the distance regardless of who wins. I think D-Rod is capable of getting it done, but I just feel like he's outmatched, man, when it comes to the skill level at this point in his career. The last time we saw him was at UFC 318 against Holland, and yeah, he looked okay, but Uros Medic is fast, man. And he just might be, outside of Ian Gary, the slickest and fastest striker that D-Rod has had to fight in his career. Slow the fight down, make this thing go long is how I think D-Rod can get it done. Now let's talk about Uros Medic. This is a guy that's grown on me. This is a guy that's really grown on me. And what I mean by grown on me is when he came into the UFC, it's just like we weren't hearing a lot about Uros Medic, right? You'd watch him fight, he gets a knockout, then he gets submitted. And so it was kind of, bouncing, win-loss early in the career. But now you are seeing what the doctor has ordered, man. This guy is 13-3, 11 wins by knockout, 2 by sub, 10 first-round finishes. That's why this guy is getting a main event right now and a big opportunity with the UFC heading to Belgrade. And look, when you look at the matchmaking, I was thinking that they would give him like a top 10 guy. But I think that this is truly the UFC sitting back going, we want to make sure this dude gets a big win here. And so we're going to give him kind of a slow, stiff, past his finest hour, Daniel Rodriguez, who isn't going to probably be explosive enough or technical enough to get the fight to the floor. So where's this going to take place? Probably on the feet. And like I said earlier in the video, we've seen that Medic does have good takedown defense. His technique, his mechanics, his fundamentals for stopping takedowns, working back to the feet, are very, very, very good. And I know he fought Miktabek Orlabai. Things didn't go his way. That's Orlabai, and we're seeing how good he is. He just set a record against Chris Curtis, right, for how many times he was able to take him down. So I think this fight takes place on the feet. Medic, to me, he's just got D-Rod outgunned, man. Like, I'm not trying to make this fight something that it isn't, right? Outside of a fluky shot from D-Rod or Medic getting tired, like, I just don't see how D-Rod beats this guy other than making the fight go long. And there's no guarantee there, right? Because we saw Medic burst onto the scene, right, on DWCS, got the impressive KO, runs through Cruz, right? Got submitted by Jalen Turner, who's a long, rangy striker. He's a tricky matchup, especially if you're just going to try to kickbox with him, right? Got the job done over Morales, stopped Matthew Semmelsberger, and that was a 3-round fight. Right, so that was where I was like, okay, we're seeing Medic kind of get drawn long here. So we've seen that he can outstrike you. We've seen that he can play the tit-for-tat game. He can mix things up well. So like I've been saying, there's not a guarantee that if the fight goes long that that'll favor D-Rod. But I'm just saying early, this Medic is a sprinter, man. And getting submitted by Miktabek Orlabai, we're seeing how good he is. And he's a guy that has been, kind of bouncing around weight classes, some of that lighter man skill, and a super technical grappler with power in his hands. So that's kind of stylistically a little bit of a nightmarish matchup for Medic, right? But knocking out Tim Means, it is what it is. Tim Means a little bit older at that point. Soriano, heavy hitter, a bigger guy. Right, goes out there, dropped early by Gilbert Urbina. We saw him pop right back up and then knock out Urbina with that piston of a left hand, right? Then getting it done against Muslim Salikov, beautiful KO, and the big victory most recently that kind of put him on the map, knocking out an established veteran in this weight class who, to me, is much better than D-Rod at this point in their careers in Jeff Neal. So if you're knocking out Jeff Neal, who's also a southpaw, which kind of tuned up Medic for a fight like this, I almost, in a way, man, like, no disrespect to D-Rod, I like him, but I just can't help but feel like this is a step back compared to Jeff Neal for Uros Medic. But Medic can't take him lightly, obviously. He's not going to, right? This is a big opportunity for Medic. Medic is very slick. Very, very slick. He fights behind the jab well, explodes in the range. He's got that piston of a left hand that's just perfectly straight down the pipe. You've seen if he gets into the pocket, D-Rod will drop his hands and just kind of swing and hip fire, right? You can't do that against Medic because Medic will hang out in the pocket, keep his eyes, locked in on the target, and he slides just out of the way with his hands up, and then he'll throw the shots to where the openings are. We saw him do that against Jeff Neal, clipped him with a good left hand, had him hurt, and then just threw that left hand right around the guard. It was more of a left hook, right? Because you see him throw the straight left. Then he saw, as Neal was kind of backing away, boom, right around that lead shoulder of Jeff Neal, and was able to put him away with a beautiful left hook. And when you watch Medic fight, it's kind of a boxing-like stance where he's kind of bladed, but you see him bounce the lead leg a little bit to go a little bit more Thai-esque. He checks kicks pretty well. He does a good job of, teeping to the body, mixing in, some head kicks as well. Uros Medic is the full package when it comes to the striking, man. He doesn't have the whippiest of kicks, right? It's a little bit more labored when it comes to the kicks. I just feel like it's all about the boxing of Uros Medic at this point, man. His slickness on the feet, his speed, the way that he's able to close the distance. I just can't help but feel like this is just like a hand-picked fight for Medic to go out here and stunt and get a highlight reel KO. Because that's kind of back to the point I made earlier in the video is after Medic knocked out Jeff Neal, I'm like, maybe they give him Leon Edwards. They give him, a former champion. They give him a big name like that to where it's like, man, if Medic beats him, he's then going to be in the top 5 and we kind of just race him to the title. He's a fresh contender in a loaded weight class. But I kind of like this, actually. A little bit of a slow build. Give him, again, it's a fight, but this to me is a step back from Jeff Neal, and it's a way to get Medic a little bit more reps at the top. This would then put him on a 4-fight win streak. Then you give him that primed and ready big name in the weight class to where you kind of see how the division plays out a little bit more. And we've seen that Medic does stop takedowns pretty well, but some of the grapplers that are at 170, man, we got some savages, right? Obviously, the champion, Islam Makhachev. You got Sean Brady. You got Kamaru Usman. You got Yaroslav Amosov. Like, there are some beasts when it comes to the grappling at 170 pounds. So the UFC saying, we'll give him Jeff Neal. Now we're going to go ahead and give him D-Rod, who is predominantly a striker, who is not in his prime anymore, who's slower, reckless a little bit on the defense. D-Rod will start technical, but then he starts to brawl, especially if you start to tag him, gets a little frustrated maybe. Then he starts to kind of hip fire these shots to where he just creates too many openings. And against an accurate, precise puncher who's good on the offense at going first, but then also pulling you into range to be able to counter. That is what Uros Medic does a fantastic job of, man. Uros Medic, must-see TV, a guy that I've become a big fan of over the past couple fights, and for good reason. I know a lot of us are high on Uros Medic right now, and this to me is the UFC tossing him a layup. It's just his job now to go out there and put two hands on that thing and jam it and get the two-handed jam. So I think Uros Medic goes out here, highlight reel KO, first round against Daniel Rodriguez. And look, like I said before, that fight against Semmelsberger, we did see it go a little bit longer, but I just feel like Medic is a guy that's just made so many improvements since that fight, and you're seeing it. Look what he did to Neal, man. That's so impressive. And I know that before that fight, what Prates did to Jeff Neal, so you could say, well, maybe Jeff, wasn't exactly the same guy. I don't believe that. Right? I know that, maybe a little more hesitant because he just got KO'd, but Prates is a monster. And what Medic did, he made it even easier than what Prates did. I'm not saying Medic is better than Prates. I'm just saying, you get my point. Medic is dangerous. He's a fast starter, and if there's ever a way to go out there and make it non-competitive in a way with D-Rod, it's to jump on him right away and not give him any time to get a feel for the fight. Get in his face, pull him into a technical slugfest where D-Rod will start to be kind of untechnical and looping these shots and getting a little reckless, to where Uros Medic in those moments, he does not get reckless and he will sharpshoot you right down the pipe. I just can't help but seeing a left hand. He's gonna lock in the missile, man. Target acquired. Boom! Missile of a left hand right down the middle is going to knock out a little bit slower. Well, I shouldn't say a little bit. I'm being nice. A much slower, in my opinion, D-Rod than what we've seen over the past few years. Medic is fast. He closes the distance very quickly. I think he sleeps Daniel Rodriguez in the very first round. And if D-Rod is able to battle some adversity, it's not to say that Medic can't catch him in the second round or catch him in the third round or even later, or just outscore him and win a decision. But I don't think we're going the full 25. I think someone gets finished, and I think more often than not, I have very high confidence that Uros Medic is going to go out here and make this thing look rather easy. He's just on a different level. And I know D-Rod's a dog. He's tough. He's going to go in there and give it all he's got. D-Rod's always fun, man, but I think he's just outgunned here. I just think he's outgunned, and I think that the cannon will be sounding. Boom! Too fast, too sharp, too accurate. Uros Medic is going to knock out Daniel Rodriguez in the first round at UFC Fight Night Belgrade.